Thanks for purchasing a Spectrum full face mask. Today I want to show you how to install your second stage regulator into the mask itself. Now, some things that come with the full face mask, when you open up your box, you're going to notice there's a bag that has a couple of zip ties in it. Now, these are a particular zip tie. They're mil spec. If you look in the manual here, as a matter of fact, there's the specification number for the zip ties. You only want to use a high quality, in fact, use only the recommended zip ties to secure your regulator into the mask. It also comes with a wrench. Now, this wrench is a particular wrench. It's proprietary. It has these notches on the ends. I'll show you what those are for there in a minute. Set the zip ties out of the way. Then it also comes with a manual, as I showed you earlier. It's got the zip ties in it, the specs for the zip ties, but it does have a lot of details in this. Read your manual. I can't stress that enough, how important it is that you familiarize yourself with everything that's in the manual. And refer to it often if you have any questions. Look there first. It also comes with a bumper sticker or a sticker you can put on your Pelican cases or wherever. So now when you get the mask, you want to inspect it. Anytime that you get anything new, especially a piece of life support, and this would be considered a component to life support, you want to inspect it to make sure that there's no damage that from handling or shipping or whatever the case may be. Now on the side, when we install the regulator into the mask, we have to take apart the lower components of the mask. Now there's an inner mask frame on the inside here that's held in by this nut that's here found on diver's left. Now on the diver's right side, this is your COM port. If you had communications, you would have your push to talk button here and the cables would come out, cable to a buddy phone, a pair of cables to the earphone, and the whip to the ear microphone assembly would be on this side. But we want to remove this inner mask frame. Let me flip the mask over. I want to show you the inside of where that inner mask frame is. You can see how that's fitted on the inside there. Now, so we want to remove the nut on the opposite side. We want to remove this nut to be able to remove this frame. We always want to take this frame out whenever we install our second stage. To get it out of the way just makes it much easier to work with. So I'm going to use a wrench, and you'll notice how the wrench lines up to these notches in on the nut here that holds the inner mask frame together. So we're going to loosen this lefty-loosey, standard right-hand thread. We'll back that out. Once you get it to a point as to where it's loose, you can go ahead and unscrew it. We want to make sure that we don't let this roll away. We want to save this because we're going to put it back together with that. Now we're going to flip the mask sort of inside out, and I'm going to remove it. There's a U-shaped component on the side to the communications port, and I'm going to pull that out, give it a little stretch, and I'm going to pull that out, and now you can remove the entire frame. So we're going to set the frame aside. Now, before we do anything else, we want to sort of turn the mask inside out. I want to show you what the features are here. If this looks familiar, this is what your bite mouthpiece would look like, the end of your bite mouthpiece. So it's, the mask basically takes the place of your bite mouthpiece. So we're replacing your bite mouthpiece with a full face mask that covers your entire face. Inspect this to make sure that there's no damage, no tears, or anything around these components here. So now we're going to take our zip tie, and I've already started one. I'm going to start one with a loop in it. Now the loop has to be big enough to go around the entire assembly in here, and I'm going to go ahead and snip the end off here just to make it a little easier to handle. So I'm going to take this end off, and I'm going to set that off to the side. Now you see here what I've got. I've got the beginnings of the loop. Now we want to take our second stage regulator. In this case, I've got an Apex XTX 100. And I'm going to insert it just as you can imagine, as you would insert the mouthpiece over top of your regulator, the mouthpiece tube here of the regulator. Now, this may take a little stretching, and you can stretch this up to about 50% in size, depending on the regulator that you have. All of them are different. There's quite a few. We size this to fit the vast majority of regulators out there. So I'm going to insert that mouthpiece tube into the regulator. I'm going to twist it a little bit to make sure that it's in there nice and straight. If I have to stretch it as necessary to get that lined up and straight. And there we go. That looks about, maybe just a little bit more to twist that in there. That looks pretty straight to me. Okay, so now on the inside, On the inside, you'll see that we have the mouthpiece. Pardon me for bumping my camera stand there. We've got the mouthpiece protruding through. We want this to be about flush, give or take, about flush with the mouthpiece tube of the regulator. Now we're going to take our zip tie. And again, we pre-bent this zip tie. Now where we want, this is referred to as the knot. Where we want this knot is going to be off to the side of the regulator at, say, about the 9 o'clock position. You think of this as an oval clock. At about the 9 o'clock position is where we want this knot. So now I'm going to slip this down. And I'm going to insert, you're going to notice it gets a little tight. All regulators, most regulators are going to be a little bit different. This one's a little tight here to the exhaust tee. The exhaust tee is pushing on the bottom of the mask. So I'm kind of constricted there. That's not too big of a deal. I want to be able to slip this zip tie in, and you'll notice, if you can see, and I'll show a close-up of this. I'm going to slip the zip tie down, and I'm going to kind of force it down in there. And now I'm going to twist the knot around, making sure that that's still down in there. I'm going to slip the knot around, and I'm going to start to tighten the knot up. Now, some tools that are handy to have, and there's one tool that you especially need to have, and that's going to be a pair of needle nose pliers. So once we get this started, I'm going to make sure that that knot's positioned where I want it, about the 9 o'clock position. And I'm going to take my needle nose pliers now, and I'm going to crank this over. Being careful not to pinch the skirt. I'm going to tighten this up. Now, the tag end of the zip tie, I've got a pair of wire cutters here, also handy to have. I'm going to be real careful. I'm going to go in, I'm going to take that off, just to get that out of the way. And now I'm going to continue to tighten this as tight as I can get it without breaking the zip tie. Now, just in case, if you do break the zip tie, and that's going to be pretty snug, if you do break the zip tie, well, just make a note of how tight you tightened it, and don't go quite that tight the next time. Now I'm going to take these wire cutters, and I'm going to be very, very careful, and I'm going to go in again, being careful not to cut the skirt. I'm going to take that off. Now you will notice I'm going to turn this around a little bit. It's going to be a little upside down, but when you look at the end of the knot, there's some sharp edges here. So we want to snip those sharp edges off. Now to take those sharp edges off, I'm going to use a pair of fingernail clippers. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to snip that off again, being very careful not to cut the skirt. And now I feel on this end of this zip tie, that's really nice and clean. A lot of times when you snip a zip tie off with a pair of wire cutters, it leaves a real sharp point on there. And we want to eliminate that. We want to get rid of that real sharp point. So now we've got this installed. I want to take a look to make sure that I've got it fitted the way I need it. And we'll see, I've got the zip tie on there. It's all seated on the flange. And then I'm going to give it a test pull. Take a look on the inside. Nothing shifted, nothing moved. And now we're going to take our mouthpiece flange, or the inner mask flange, and we're going to reinsert it. So now when I reinsert it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the threaded end into the hole. The hole here on the side of the mask. I'm going to put the threaded end in. Now I'm going to flex it around, and this takes a little bit of manipulation. I'm going to flex that around, and I'm going to slip it down over top of the mouthpiece tube and the skirt. Now, again, this mask is a little tight on the inside here, so I'm going to force that, apply a little bit of pressure to slip that down in there. Now, here's kind of the trick to this, and you'll notice in the manual, when you read in the manual, that you want the knot to be, you don't want it to catch, and it's a little confusing when you read it. It says you want the mouthpiece tube knot of the zip tie to not be between on the inside of the frame. Now what that means is when you pull on this mask, you don't want to apply tension to the knot itself. So you want that knot to be able to slip and sort of be free floating in there where it goes in and out as necessary as you flex the mask. Otherwise, if you have it pinned underneath of the inner frame here, I'm a little out of line here, but if you have that pinned in the inner frame there, then what happens is when you pull on this, it catches on the knot and all the tension goes right to that knot, and that provides for sort of a weak spot in the in the assembly of the installation here. And so off to the side here, you'll notice that it's the widest portion of the oval slot here. That's why we wanted it either in the 9 o'clock. You could install it over to this side. I always do it on the 9 o'clock position. That's where we show it. So now once we've got that in, I'm going to slip that down to where the U of the frame fits over top of the inside of the dummy plug on the diver's right or the COM port side. So now I'm going to go back over to the opposite side here to where this side of the nut of the inner frame is, and I'm going to take my my nut that goes on the outside. I'm going to find the threads. Now what do I mean by that? I'm going to rotate this backwards until I feel it click into place. There we go. Feel it click into place, and now I'm going to crank it down. So I'm going to tighten it just by hand at first, and then I'm going to take my specialized wrench again, and now I'm going to tighten this up. I'll rotate it around to where I can get a good grip on it. And that's really the importance of this. You need to make sure you get a good firm grip on this when we're tightening this up. So now how tight do we want to make this? We want it to be nice and snug. We don't want to go crazy on it, but we want it to be nice and snug. So I'm going to give it just a little bit more of a tweak. And I'm going to tighten this down, and that's pretty snug. Now, I want to give you a little helpful hint. If by chance, when you put this on and you've dived it for a good while, this could get kind of bound up with some minerals and stuff, or if somebody else cranked it on really tight. A helpful hint, and this might mean you have to get with a friend that has one. If you can't get that off, be real careful about this. If you have to, you get a second wrench, and you can put it on. And this helps you get a better grip on it so that you don't rip this out. Now on this side, this nut is not very expensive. If you do damage this nut, they can be replaced. Now on the COM port side, if you had a buddy phone or something on that, you want to be real careful. You don't want to damage the nut on a piece of communications equipment, because this is a captive nut. Now let's say here we go. We've got the mask fully the second stage regulator installed into the mask. Now we're ready to attach our hose. Always use a backup wrench. So you need to have an extra wrench whenever you're, a pair of wrenches, whenever you're putting the hose on or taking a hose off any second stage regulator. You always want to use 2 wrenches. You don't want to take the wrench and crank this on without having a backup wrench on the regulator. That's very important. So again, now it's installed. Now, let's say we're done for a while and we want to use this second stage, or we want to swap it out. As I mentioned earlier, you want to take this apart, and you can do this. It's not that big of a deal. You can leave the inner frame in, and you're going to take your wire cutters, or you can use a pair of pliers. If you use a pair of pliers, you're going to go in, you're going to crush that knot and give it a little bit of a twist, working that knot over. And there's a little tab in there that's the locking mechanism, and we're going to cut that off. I'm going to use my my wire cutters, and I'm going to go in. It's kind of hard to show this on the camera. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to snip that off. So I've removed that, I've cut that knot off, and I can remove the zip tie now. And I can now remove my second stage regulator. That just popped out there, and we've got the second stage regulator is now has been removed. So That's how you install the second stage regulator into a Spectrum full face mask. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call at Ocean Technology Systems. Send us an email and we'll help you out in any way, shape, or form that we can. Look at our other videos that we have under our video section of our website. And again, we want to thank everybody for being customers of ours, and we try to be very responsive. So if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you.